My fiancée slept with my groomsman and thought I wouldn't find out, so I left her at the altar with nothing but her dress and shame. I'm a 29-year-old guy, and for the longest time, I honestly believed Claire was my forever person. We met 3 years ago at a mutual friend's wedding, the kind of night where everything feels cinematic. She walked in wearing this soft blue dress, laughing like the world existed just to make her happy. I remember thinking, that's the kind of light you don't find twice. I wasn't even supposed to be at that wedding. My buddy dragged me there last minute after a breakup, saying I needed to see what hope looks like. And somehow, that's exactly what I did. Claire had this way of listening, really listening when you spoke, like every word mattered. We ended up sitting on the steps outside the venue, shoes off, talking for hours about everything from childhood dreams to the meaning of loyalty. It felt easy, like I'd known her forever. For months after, I told my friends I'd finally found peace. No games, no mixed signals, no pretending to be someone I wasn't. We both wanted the same things, a home that felt safe, a love that lasted, a partner you could trust with your worst days. She'd always say, "You're the calm I never knew I needed," and I'd just smile, thinking I'd finally won the lottery of love. I started planning my future around her. Sunday breakfasts, shared bank accounts, even baby names whispered half-jokingly at 2 a.m. Everything about her seemed genuine. She'd look me in the eyes and say, "I'll never hurt you, I promise." And I believed her. If I'd known how much those words would haunt me later, I might have walked away that very night. But back then, all I saw was forever. And that's exactly how the trap was set. Ryan wasn't just my best friend. He was my chosen brother. We grew up 2 houses apart, survived the same high school drama, shared the same dumb dreams. He was the kind of guy who'd show up at 2 a.m. when your car broke down or when your heart did. He'd help me through every major milestone. College stress, my parents' divorce, even co-signing for my first apartment when I couldn't qualify on my own. If trust had a face, it would have been his. When I introduced him to Claire, it felt natural, like connecting 2 halves of my life. They hit it off right away, joking about my terrible taste in movies and how I always ordered the same thing at restaurants. I remember watching them laugh together and thinking, man, this is what peace looks like. My fiancée and my best friend getting along. That was supposed to be a blessing, not a curse. Over time, the 3 of us became inseparable. Game nights, brunches, road trips, Ryan was there for all of it. He'd tease me saying, "If you ever mess this up, I'm stealing her," and we'd all laugh. Claire would roll her eyes and punch his shoulder, and I'd shake my head, never once thinking it was anything more than friendly banter. When we started planning the wedding, it was obvious Ryan would be my groomsman. No one else even came close. I remember telling him, "You're the one person I can count on to keep things together that day." He clapped my shoulder, smiled, and said, "You got it, brother." I believed him. Looking back now, I realized the irony. How the person I trusted to stand beside me at the altar would be the same one standing behind my back in betrayal. And the worst part? The signs were already there. I just refused to see them. I proposed to Claire on a quiet Friday night at the same rooftop restaurant where we first met. She thought we were just going out to celebrate her promotion, but I'd been planning it for weeks. Candles, music, the exact blue dress she wore the night we met. I remembered every detail. When I got down on one knee, she covered her mouth, tears welling up instantly. She said yes before I even finished asking. The entire restaurant clapped, and for a second, the world felt still. I slipped the ring on her finger, nothing extravagant but meaningful. She kept staring at it under the light, whispering, "It's perfect. You're perfect." That night, she posted every photo online captioned, "To forever with my best friend." The comments flooded in, and I couldn't help but smile. I'd finally made it. Love, stability, a future. Our families went into full celebration mode. Her mom cried over floral arrangements, my dad gave me a handshake that almost broke my hand, and Ryan? He was the first to show up at my door with a bottle of whiskey. "We did it, man," he grinned. "You found your forever." He offered to help with logistics, vendor calls, and even bachelor party plans. Everyone joked he was the perfect best man, and he was. At least that's what I thought. But then little things started to feel off. I'd walk into the room and they'd stop laughing mid-conversation. I'd see messages pop up on her phone late at night. "Ryan, still awake?" followed by Claire locking her screen too quickly. Once I asked her about it, trying to keep my tone calm. She laughed. "You're being paranoid. He's your best friend, babe." I wanted to believe her, so I did. I told myself love meant trust, not suspicion. But somewhere deep down, a whisper had already started. Something's wrong. I just didn't know how wrong it really was. The closer the wedding got, the heavier my chest felt. At first, I blamed it on nerves, cold feet, the usual stuff every groom jokes about. But this was different. It was that kind of unease that doesn't shout. It hums quietly in your bones, warning you that something's off. Ryan started flaking on plans. He'd cancel our usual hangouts with half-baked excuses like, "Work's been crazy," or "Claire needed help with something for the wedding." The first few times, I brushed it off. He was doing me a favor after all. But it became a pattern. And Claire, she wasn't the same either. She used to text me during the day just to say she missed me. Now her replies were cold, delayed, distant. When I tried to hold her close, she'd stiffen like affection was a chore. One night, I asked gently, "Hey, is something wrong between us?" She sighed, put her phone down, and said, "You're imagining things. You've been so controlling lately." That word, controlling, cut deep. I'd never been that guy. I'd never told her what to wear, who to talk to, where to go. I just wanted to understand why the woman I loved suddenly felt like a stranger, but she was always ready with explanations. Every time a small lie surfaced, she had an answer. "Oh, Ryan dropped me off because it was raining. He just texted about the bachelor party. You're overthinking." And I wanted to believe her so badly that I ignored the inconsistencies, the mismatched timelines, the little pauses before she spoke, the way her eyes flickered when I asked about her day. Still, that whisper in my gut was getting louder. It wasn't screaming yet, but it was waiting for proof. It happened on a Thursday night, one of those quiet evenings where everything feels routine. I was sitting at the kitchen table finalizing our last batch of wedding invitations. Claire was in the shower, humming some song I used to love. I needed to double-check a guest's email address, and her tablet was right there on the counter. She'd always told me I could use it whenever, so I didn't think twice. When I opened the screen, a notification slid across the top. Ryan. Last night was amazing. At first, my brain refused to process it. I blinked, half expecting it to disappear, to be some kind of glitch or cruel coincidence, but it didn't. My hands went numb as I tapped the message. What opened next felt like a nightmare wearing my life's face. There were texts, flirty, intimate, cruel in their familiarity. Jokes they'd shared about me. Conversations about sneaking around before the big day. And then the photos of them. Together. Her hair tangled. His arm around her bare shoulders, smiling, comfortable, like it wasn't a mistake. It was a secret they'd been keeping for a long time. The room tilted. My body went cold. It was like watching a car crash in slow motion, knowing you're the one inside. Every inhale felt like glass. I could hear the shower running in the background, the sound of her humming, completely unaware that her world was seconds from collapsing. I just sat there, staring at the screen, unable to blink. The air felt thick, heavy, poisonous. I wanted to scream, to throw the tablet across the room, to do something. But instead I just froze. When she finally walked out, smiling and carefree, towel wrapped around her, I couldn't look at her the same again. And in that silence, I knew everything had changed forever. When she came out of the bathroom, steam still clinging to her skin, I was sitting at the table, tablet in hand. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I just looked at her and said, "How long has it been going on with Ryan?" Her face went blank for a second, like her brain stalled. Then came the act. The confusion, the trembling lip, the tears. "What are you talking about?" she whispered. I showed her the screen. For a moment, her eyes gave her away. Fear, not guilt. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by a sob. "Those photos aren't what they look like. You've been distant lately. I felt alone."
He was just...
There. That line hit me like a slap. "You've been distant." As if my lack of attention turned betrayal into mercy. She dropped to her knees, crying harder, saying it was just one stupid night, that she'd been drinking, that it didn't mean anything. But every word felt rehearsed, every tear felt timed. I couldn't breathe. I left the room, called Ryan, hoping, no, begging for a different version of the story, but he didn't pick up. The call rang, and when it finally went to voicemail, I realized how quiet everything had gotten. An hour later, a text came in from him. It just happened once. Don't ruin everything. Don't ruin everything, as if I was the problem. That was the moment it hit me. This wasn't just about cheating. It was about betrayal at the deepest level. My best friend, my fiancée, the two people I'd have trusted with my life, quietly burning it behind my back. And somehow, I was the one being asked to keep it together. The next few days were a blur of apologies, half-truths, and crocodile tears. Claire switched from denial to desperation like it was a performance she'd practiced. She'd grab my hands, sobbing, saying, "It was a mistake. I swear it didn't mean anything. I love you. You're my person." Her voice cracked at all the right moments. Her tears fell on cue, but I'd already seen the truth. You can't unsee betrayal once it's burned into your mind. When I didn't respond, she called her mom. Then her mom called mine. Before I knew it, both families were involved, trying to turn the whole thing into some kind of relationship hiccup. Her father came over one night, his tone firm but polite. "Son, people make mistakes. You can't throw away love over one bad choice." One bad choice. That's how they framed it. Like spilling coffee on the couch. Not the months of lies, not the intimacy behind my back, just an oops. For a moment, I almost gave in. The history between us, the wedding plans, the people who believed in us, it all pressed down on me like a weight. There's a kind of grief that makes you want to bargain with pain, to find a way to make it all mean less than it does. But every time I looked at her, I saw him. The way she smiled in those photos. The way her body language in our home felt rehearsed now. I realized forgiveness wasn't love, it was surrender. That night, I grabbed a blanket, my car keys, and left without a word. I parked outside the apartment, watching the light in our bedroom flicker off. I couldn't bring myself to go back in. The silence in that car was heavier than any argument we ever had. It was the sound of something dying. After a week of staring at the same four walls and replaying messages in my head, I made a choice that felt like stepping off a cliff and landing with purpose. I could cancel everything, call off the wedding, make a scene, and let that be the end. But every time I imagined that, I pictured her with Ryan shrugging it off while I looked like the dramatic ex. I wanted something cleaner, something that left no room for excuses or spin, so I lied. Not to hurt, at least not exactly, but to make the truth unavoidable. I told myself it was a kind of tough mercy. Let them keep living in the lie until the moment the lie had nowhere left to hide. Over the next few days, I became an actor in my own life. I kissed her hello in front of friends, joked about final vendor calls, smiled through dress fittings. I answered wedding emails, I planned the seating chart, I thanked Ryan effusively for handling the bachelor party. Every thank you felt like swallowing acid, but I kept my face soft and steady. Inside, I was a quiet machine. I wrote down everything, dates, times, small details from the messages, the exact wording that had poisoned me. I printed things, organized them, reheard conversations until they were clear. It wasn't about spectacle. It was about evidence. If they wanted to pretend it didn't mean anything, I would give them proof that it did. I promised myself I wouldn't stoop to public shaming for the sake of attention. I wanted a moment where the truth landed so precisely it changed their whole story. People asked if I was okay. "You sure?" my father asked, pulling me into a hug. I smiled and said, "Yeah, better than ever." It felt like smiling through poison, beautiful on the surface, lethal underneath. By the time rehearsal dinner rolled around, no one suspected a thing. I had rehearsed my role, polished my smile, and hidden the chaos in the quiet of my notebook. They thought we were fine. What they didn't know was that the plan had a final note, and it was set for the very center of the ceremony. The days leading up to the wedding felt like living inside a dream I couldn't wake from. Everything looked perfect from the outside. Flowers arriving, tuxedos fitted, laughter echoing through rooms filled with people who thought love was in the air. But behind every smile, I felt the clock ticking down to the truth. Ryan was there, of course. He had to be. He still showed up to every rehearsal, every final detail check, acting like the loyal best man. But I saw the cracks, the way his eyes darted anywhere but mine, how his laughter sounded forced, how he always found an excuse to leave a room a few seconds after me. Once I caught his reflection in a mirror, staring at me with this silent guilt that looked almost rehearsed. I smiled back, calm, collected. It scared him. Claire floated through it all like nothing had happened. She wore joy like armor, greeting guests, posting updates, talking about our fairy tale love story. She even kissed me in front of everyone during the rehearsal dinner, whispering, "We made it, babe." I looked her straight in the eyes and said, "Yeah, we did." If anyone noticed the hollowness in my tone, they didn't say a word. Everyone was too busy celebrating. Her mother toasted to the couple who restores faith and love. Ryan raised his glass too, his hand shaking slightly. I almost laughed. Each fake smile from them added another layer to my calm. I wasn't angry anymore. I was ready. Ready for the curtain to rise and the performance to end. That night, lying alone in bed, I rehearsed my lines. Not the vows, but the words that would finally strip the mask off everything. I pictured her face when it hit her, the silence of the crowd, the collapse of her perfect illusion. I wasn't just ending a wedding. I was ending the lie that everyone had been clapping for. The morning of the wedding felt unreal. The sky was spotless, the air crisp, one of those rare cinematic days where everything looks too perfect to be real. Guests filled the pews, the music played softly, and everyone was smiling as if love itself was watching from above. I stood at the altar, hands clasped, heart steady. My friends thought I was nervous. They had no idea. Then, the doors opened. Claire appeared in white, glowing, radiant, breathtaking. The room filled with sighs and soft murmurs of admiration. She smiled at me, that same soft smile that once melted every wall I had. But now, it felt like watching a stranger wearing the skin of the woman I used to love. As she walked toward me, I didn't see a bride. I saw a liar beautifully dressed in denial. She reached me, took my hands, and whispered, "You look so calm." I smiled. "I am." The officiant began his lines, his voice steady and warm. "Do you, Jacob, take Claire to be your lawfully wedded wife?" That was my cue. I took a step back, still smiling, and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "I can't marry someone who already belongs to my best man." Gasps rippled through the crowd like thunder. Claire froze, color draining from her face. The officiant stuttered, unsure what to do. I reached into my jacket, pulled out a small folder, and let the printed screenshots fall onto the floor between us. They fluttered like dead leaves. Messages, photos, proof. The whispers began instantly. "Is that... Oh my God. Ryan!" Someone pulled out a phone. Flashes went off. The entire illusion crumbled in seconds. Claire tried to speak, voice cracking. "Jacob, please!" But I was already walking down the aisle, each step lighter than the last. Behind me, her sobs filled the church. I didn't turn around. Let her keep the dress. Let her keep the shame. The chaos that followed was unlike anything I'd ever seen. Guests stood frozen for a few seconds, unsure if it was some kind of cruel prank or performance. Then came the whispers, dozens of them spreading through the church like wildfire. Claire's mother rushed forward, grabbing her daughter's trembling hands, hissing something about damage control. Her father stormed toward me, shouting that I was humiliating their family. But it was too late. The evidence was already in everyone's hands. Ryan disappeared before anyone could reach him. One moment he was sitting among the groomsmen, pale and sweating, and the next he was gone, just an empty chair and a coward's silence. Claire sank to the floor, makeup streaking, her sobs echoing off the church walls. The same walls that were supposed to hold our vows now echoed with betrayal. Outside, cameras were already flashing. Someone had filmed the entire scene, their phone aimed like a weapon at the collapsing fairy tale. Reporters would have paid for footage like that, but I didn't care. I just walked past it all. No words, no explanations. Just the sound of my shoes hitting the pavement. I didn't drive to the honeymoon. I didn't even go home. I went north to a small cabin my uncle once lent me years ago, a place with no Wi-Fi and barely any phone signal. The silence up there was the loudest thing I'd ever heard, but for once it didn't hurt. It felt like peace. Raw, honest, earned peace. By the time I finally turned my phone back on days later, the story had exploded online. The video of my altar walkout had millions of views. Strangers were calling me the groom who exposed betrayal live. Memes, hashtags, sympathy, none of it mattered. For the first time in months, I didn't need validation. I just needed quiet. It didn't take long for the internet to do what it always does, turn pain into entertainment. The leaked wedding footage was everywhere. TikTok edits, Reddit threads, reaction videos with dramatic titles like "Groom exposes cheating bride in front of 200 guests." Every platform had a version. Every stranger had an opinion. Claire's perfect image, the sweet, loyal fiancée, shattered overnight. Her friends, the same ones who once called me husband material, went silent. Some unfollowed her. Others posted vague quotes about betrayal coming to light. Even her coworkers distanced themselves when the screenshots started circulating. The internet had already taken sides, and the verdict was brutal. A week later, she emailed me from a new account. The subject line just said, "Please." Inside, she called herself a victim, said she was being bullied, destroyed, that people were harassing her online. She asked me to make a post clearing her name, saying we'd both made mistakes. Reading it, I felt something unexpected. Nothing. Just an emptiness where anger used to live. I never replied. I didn't need to. For months, I'd carried the weight of her choices, twisting myself into knots trying to make sense of them. Now she was finally facing them herself, and the universe didn't need my help. Watching her crumble under the pressure wasn't satisfying. It was just inevitable. People messaged me, calling me a hero, asking if I felt vindicated. I told one guy, revenge wasn't the point. Truth was. And that's all it ever was. I didn't want her life ruined. I just wanted mine back. And now in the quiet aftermath, I finally had it. Months passed and life slowly started stitching itself back together. Messy, uneven, but real. People assumed I was fine now that the truth was out, but healing isn't as neat as a headline. The videos had stopped trending, the noise faded, but the silence that followed carried its own weight. I didn't miss her or him. I missed the version of myself that still believed loyalty meant something sacred. Then I heard through a mutual friend that Ryan had lost his job. Apparently, HR had gotten hold of the screenshots. The affair hadn't just been personal, it had started during a company work trip under official hours, violating policy. They fired him quietly, no public spectacle, just a cold, signed envelope and security walking him out. Claire, meanwhile, had moved back in with her parents. The same parents who once begged me to forgive her now couldn't even look her in the eye. She'd been uninvited from a cousin's wedding to avoid tension. Shame had a way of clinging longer than perfume. You'd think hearing all that would make me feel vindicated. But it didn't. It just made me tired. I'd thought exposing the truth would somehow reset everything, that justice would cleanse the pain. But grief doesn't care about justice. It lingers. It hides in familiar places, the empty passenger seat, the quiet mornings when no one texts good morning, the sudden memories that hit out of nowhere. One night, I sat in that same cabin again, staring into the fireplace, and realized the revenge had run its course. What remained was the ache. The trust I'd built over years, with Ryan, with her, even with myself, had been burned down to ash. And the only person left to rebuild it was me. That's when I finally understood revenge gives you a moment, not peace. Healing. That's the real work. I started therapy 3 months after everything fell apart. At first, I went just to have someone to talk to, someone who didn't already know the story, who wouldn't give me the usual, "You're better off without her" line. My therapist, Dr. Morgan, listened without flinching, even when I told her I'd orchestrated the altar reveal. She didn't judge me. She just asked, "And what did you feel afterward?" I told her, "Nothing." That's when she smiled softly and said, "Then that's where we'll start." Week by week, we peeled back layers I didn't know existed. Beneath the anger and humiliation, there was guilt. This quiet, constant guilt for not seeing it sooner. For letting them fool me. For ignoring my instincts. Dr. Morgan helped me see that betrayal isn't a reflection of my failure. It's a reflection of theirs. That hit me harder than any apology ever could. Outside of therapy, I started living again, slowly, clumsily, but sincerely. I ran in the mornings even when my body protested. I started journaling, not to document pain, but to measure progress. I cooked meals that took hours just because they made the house smell like home again. Every small thing became a quiet rebellion against who I was before, the man who waited for someone else's loyalty to feel whole. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was healing with intention. I wasn't chasing peace. I was building it. And somewhere between those sessions, those runs, and those quiet dinners alone, I realized something powerful. Forgiveness wasn't for them. It was for me. Not forgiving to forget. Forgiving to finally stop carrying what wasn't mine to hold. A year passed. Long enough for the noise to die down, for people to move on to new scandals, new heartbreaks. I had rebuilt my life quietly, no social media updates, no public reflections, just steady progress. Then one morning I opened my inbox and saw her name, Claire. For a second my stomach tightened like muscle memory. I hesitated before clicking, even though I already knew what it would be. The subject line read, "I owe you everything I never said." The email was long, pages of guilt, reflection, and soft nostalgia. She said she'd gone to therapy, that she finally understood the gravity of what she'd done. She wrote about sleepless nights, about the humiliation she still carried, about how she'd never forgive herself for losing the best thing that ever happened to her. She ended it with, "I know I don't deserve you, but I hope one day you'll remember me kindly." I read it once, slowly, letting each word settle, and then without anger or hesitation I hit delete, no reply, no closure conversation, just silence, the same silence she once filled with lies. For a moment, I stared at the empty inbox, waiting for regret to hit. But instead I felt a strange calm. I realized I didn't need her apology to move forward. I didn't need her guilt to balance the scales. I'd already done the hardest part. I forgave her in the quiet of my own heart, not to fix what broke, but to free myself from it. Forgiveness, I learned, isn't reopening the door. It's closing it gently, and walking away without hate. And in that moment, I knew she was still stuck in the story, but I'd already turned the page. It's strange how peace doesn't arrive with fireworks. It just slips in quietly, like the world exhaling after a long storm. It's been over a year now since that day, and sometimes I still think about the version of me that stood at that altar. The man who thought love could survive anything, who believed loyalty was guaranteed if you gave it freely. That man died when the truth came out. But from that death came something better, clarity. Betrayal has a way of burning illusions to the ground, and once the smoke clears, you finally see what's real. I used to think I left Claire with nothing, but that's not true. I left her with the truth. And sometimes truth is the heaviest punishment there is. You can rebuild from loss, from heartbreak, even from public shame, but you can't rebuild from the mirror once it shows you who you really are. People still message me about that video sometimes. They say it was the most satisfying revenge they've ever seen. But what they don't realize is that revenge wasn't the ending. It was just the turning point. The real ending was peace. The kind that doesn't demand attention or applause. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Never stay where respect has died. Love without respect isn't devotion. It's slow decay disguised as commitment. Walking away doesn't make you weak. It means you finally chose yourself over the illusion of being loved. Sometimes I visit that cabin still. I'll stand by the lake as the sun sets, the water still and gold, the air clean and quiet. No noise, no lies, just the echo of that wedding day fading somewhere far behind me. And for the first time in my life, I don't feel broken. I just feel free.